All right, we are going to look now at something that's going to be a little difficult. There was this very much anticipated and extraordinarily viral interview that Pod Save America did with a number of the people who worked on Kamala Harris's campaign. And I want to get straight to my conclusion, and then we're going to work backwards from it. The people who ran this campaign cannot stay in charge, period. There is an important debate to be had about what does the path forward look like for Democrats. One thing is very clear. This Democratic campaign establishment is completely out of gas. Now, before we watch the first clip, I think it's important to mention, my audience is essentially split 50-50 as to whether the Democratic Party needs to move to the left or to the center or stay where it is. How could you be 50-50 split between three options? But the general point is, whenever we do any poll of our audience, whatever options we present, there's pretty equal division. And when we step back from that, my view is that whichever way you move ideologically, if at all, the way that these campaigns are being run, as evidenced by this completely failed post-mortem, is extraordinarily disturbing to me. Now, we're going to start with this first clip. In this first clip, Quentin Fulks, I hope I'm saying that correctly, Quentin Fulks says that after the disastrous debate performance of Joe Biden against Donald Trump back in June, I believe it was, there was a scramble within the campaign and within the White House to convince everybody that Biden was still up for the job and the best person for the job. Fine, that's what they were doing because he was the nominee at the time. But that there was no backup plan for what happens if Biden isn't the nominee. This is completely and utterly mind-blowing. This is the kind of lack of preparation you would expect from amateurs. These are supposedly the absolute best people that the Democratic Party can muster to run a campaign, steering the ship. And they had no backup plan. Take a listen to this.
Quentin, you were there when that switch happened. How were you able, there was a 1 month period between the debate and when the president actually dropped out. Obviously, it seemed like a dropping out could be a possibility. Were you able to do any thinking or planning in that 1 month period about what a race with the vice president would look like? Or did you have to sort of start cold on that first day, the moment you got the call or the statement went out?
I mean, we started cold. There was no planning involved in any other candidates. I mean, we were honestly in crisis management mode of keeping President Biden in the race, convincing, Democratic allies that he could still do this. And one of the things was trying to keep the president out on the road as much. We were still doing everything we could from a campaign, and he made the decision that he did not want to continue on. And he pulled some of the senior leadership together and said that he was going to be with the vice president. It also wasn't anything that our team took for granted to just say, okay, she is the nominee. We knew that there was still a situation where we had to shore up delegates, and that's where we started from. And then after that point, that is when we began to say, okay, how can we define her? Also, Trump's favorabilities numbers were creeping up, as Pluff said, and we had to do something about that as well. And so it was a lot of walking and chewing gum at the same time, but there really was no sort of contingency planning to turn the race over to her right after that debate or at any point until President Biden definitively said he wasn't going to continue on.
Now, you might be saying, David, that's not that bad. I mean, listen, he's just saying they didn't assume that Kamala Harris was going to be the nominee. She had to build consensus. They had to figure out, is she going to be the nominee? Has she convinced the delegates? And that's called democracy, David. There's no problem. It was obvious to everyone for a year that if Biden were to step down, it would almost certainly be Kamala Harris. Now, sure, it could go in a different direction, maybe. But how, as the best campaign people that there are, supposedly, when it's so obvious to, I would speak to a random person on the street and they would go, David, it's obvious that Kamala would be the replacement a year ago. And we are supposed to believe that they had no idea. It's absolutely wild. Now, there's one other thing I want to interject into this. Jon Favreau, speechwriter, the crooked media guy, Jon Favreau, he has admitted that when all of this was going wrong and they were saying, no, we had no backup. Well, there was no backup. No, nothing at all. When they had no backup, internal polling showed Trump winning with 400 electoral votes. And there was no backup plan. Listen to this.
Joe Biden's decision to run for president again was a catastrophic mistake. It just was. And he and his inner circle, they refused to believe the polls. They refused to believe he was unpopular. They refused to acknowledge until very late that anyone could be upset about inflation. And they just kept telling us that his presidency was historic and it was the greatest economy ever. We just heard him again say that it's the greatest economy ever. Clearly, 70, 80% of voters don't believe that. They don't believe that about their own personal financial situation, but they just keep telling us that. And then after the debate, the Biden people told us that the polls were fine. And Biden was still the strongest candidate. They were privately telling reporters at the time that Kamala Harris couldn't win. So they were shivving Kamala Harris to reporters while they told everyone else, not a time for an open process, and his vice president can't win, so he's the strongest candidate. Then we find out, when the Biden campaign becomes the Harris campaign, that the Biden campaign's own internal polling at the time when they were telling us he was the strongest candidate showed that Donald Trump was going to win 400 electoral votes. That's what their own internal polling said.
There were polls showing 80% of voters thought Joe Biden was too old to get a second term before the debate. And then we all watched the debate. And then in the last few weeks, Biden was campaigning and he said, we need to lock Trump up. He created a controversy over whether Trump supporters were garbage. He said, the weird thing about slapping Trump on the ass. Like his moments on the campaign trail weren't flawless either.
You cannot.
It's absurd. It's
absurd. I'm trying to be generous here.
I'm not. I'm done being.
All right. So you get the point. The idea here is no backup plan. No backup plan. Meanwhile, internally, they're going, Trump might get 400 electoral votes. Now, later during this interview, let's get back to the Pod Save America interview. Stephanie Cutter, another campaign official, talks about how there was just no way for Kamala Harris to distance herself from Joe Biden. And that one of the reasons that Harris lost is essentially Biden would have lost and Harris was a continuation of Biden. Here she acknowledges it.
Trump will be worse, and I think that's playing out right now.
And Dan, on the Biden question, we of course got that everywhere we went. And we knew what the data was. We knew we had to show her as her own person and point to the future and not try to rehash the past. But she also felt that she was part of the administration. And unless we said something like, well, I would have handled the border completely differently, we were never going to satisfy anybody. So we did talk about things like she's a different generation. Most of her career is from outside of Washington, not inside Washington. So she knows a lot of the best ideas are from across the country.
Now, I just want to pause here. We're gonna listen to a little more of this. It's critically important to understand what she's saying here. She's saying there was really no way on any kind of policy to distance from Biden, because then it just looks like you're criticizing Biden. Well, then why are you his VP? It's like an impossible situation. So what they came up with was, yes, she's like Biden, but she's younger. And while Biden's experience is from inside D.C. as a senator, VP president, Kamala Harris's experience geographically is from outside D.C. Now, as I'm saying it, I feel like an idiot because it's so stupid. That's going to make people say, well, I'm not impressed by Biden, and Harris is the same, but she's younger and she did a lot of work in California instead of in D.C. What? These are the distinctions we decided to draw rather than an actual economic message that people could get behind, addressing the issues that Trump was addressing like a fool on the campaign trail, right? Trump had no solutions to inflation and these other things, but we'll get to that in a moment.
Her career has been about reaching across the aisle, finding common sense ways to get things done. It's not been based in ideological politics. All of these things, we were trying to tell a story and give the impression that she was different without pointing to a specific issue.
Can I ask this why not a specific issue? Is it something she was unwilling to do? You worried it would feel disingenuous or?
Because she felt like she was part of the administration. So why should she look back and cherry pick some things that she would have done differently? Would she?
And of course, that would be something to think about. before you make her the nominee.
Was part of it. And she had tremendous loyalty to President Biden. And,
Understandable.
if we had said, just imagine this. You've been on plenty of campaigns. Imagine if we said, well, we would have taken this approach on the border. Imagine the round of stories coming out after that of people saying, well, she never said that in a meeting, or what meeting when she said this, or I remember when she did that. And it was just...
So listen, you get the picture. I'm not pretending that it was an easy situation. In a lot of ways, it was a completely dysfunctional situation. But the approach is admittedly disastrous here. The takeaways, the postmortem are, what are you guys thinking? Here's David Plouffe arguing that a lesson from what happened weeks ago, a month ago now almost, is that Democrats need better super PACs. What? This doesn't make any sense. Listen to this.
Been through this, some time ago, but then witnessing it again this time. We have to stop playing a different game as it relates to super PACs than the Republicans. Love our Democratic lawyers. I'm tired of it. Okay. They coordinate more than we do. I think amongst themselves, I think with the presidential campaign, I'm just sick and tired of it. Okay. So we cannot be at a disadvantage, number one. Number two, to Jen's point, I think you don't want duplication, but I think having multiple players on the field, as long as they're well coordinated, is great. Like back in 20, I spent a bunch of time with Tara McGowan, who now runs Courier with Acronym, and all we did, I think, was $80 or $90 million, which was great. We only did digital low information voters, right? So whatever Future Forward was doing, we were very focused on that, particularly low information voters of color. So I think to have an ecosystem where, whether it's on issues like reproductive health or climate or, manufacturing or healthcare or a specific lane that you're focused on in terms of messaging, I think that's really, really important. I think that they tend to have more entities that are, to Stephanie's point, clearly it is not legal what they're doing, but we are at a disadvantage when our folks are playing by a different set of rules than they are. I remember going back to 2012, you guys might remember this, Mitt Romney's running around the country asking for specific dollar amounts at super PAC events, and we were told that Barack Obama couldn't even attend them.
He had to leave the room.
So the one event, I think, right?
So listen, I don't understand how they could be blaming a lack of coordination among super PACs when Harris significantly out-fundraised Trump. There's a Forbes article which details this, which says FEC filings through November 4 show super PACs spent approximately $668 million supporting Harris, while PACs spent only $194 million supporting Trump during the exact same period of time. So I'm all for you don't unilaterally disarm, you don't give away a tool that the other side is using because then you obviously lose. I get all of that. But at the same time, what about looking at the campaign, the candidate, the issues, the fact that Trump was talking about economic policy in a way that Kamala Harris simply wasn't, even though Trump's ideas were terrible as a way to fix it? It doesn't make any sense. It just does not. We need better super PACs is the answer. Oh my God. Finally, here is David Plouffe arguing that you need to dominate the moderate voter in order to win.
Finding people. It's really hard for Democrats to win battleground states. Okay. Let's look at Pennsylvania. 25% of the electorate is liberal, roughly. 34% is conservative. By the way, in most battleground states, that conservative number is over 40. So in every battleground state, there's more conservative than liberals. So in Pennsylvania, if Exits are to believe, Trump won conservatives 91.8, Harris won liberals 93.6. Moderates, Harris won 56.43, but you kind of got to win 60% of them, right? So, for Democrats to win battleground states, to Quentin and Jen's point, it is a false choice. You want to maximize your base, of course. And that was a place where we spent enormous time, a lot of resources. That's critical. And obviously, I think in Milwaukee, just to use that as an example, we hit our turnout targets, fell a little bit short in Philly and Detroit. So that's not good. That's part of the equation. You've got to couple that with dominating in the middle, not just winning it a little. We have to dominate the moderate vote.
Now, Mathematically, he's not wrong. But the problem is that they keep trying the same stuff and it never works. You know, Stephanie Cutter brought up the campaign struggles for Kamala Harris and people seeing her as a continuity of Biden. But that's kind of how the Democratic strategy was designed. Harris actually ran slightly to Biden's right. As I've said before, Biden very clearly ran to Obama's left, and he won. Harris did not run to the left of Joe Biden. I know they called her a communist and a Marxist and all this stuff. That's because she wasn't white, okay? Because she's not white. But there was nothing to it from a policy perspective. And after all of this appealing to the middle, and it's not that she campaigned for a day with Liz Cheney, that's not why she lost, but if you take the totality of it, exit polls found that essentially the same percentage of Republicans voted for Trump this time as last time. It did nothing. She got slightly less Republican support, according to one exit poll, than did Joe Biden in 2020 and 2 points less than Hillary Clinton in 2016. So they went for it and they just didn't get it. So you either have to change your math or you have to change your strategy, but you can't just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. So final thing I want to mention on economic messaging. President Joe Biden, as a candidate in 2020, ran a way more economically progressive campaign in terms of rhetoric and speeches. Now, I know Kamala Harris had her tax deduction for new businesses, but as from rhetoric and speeches, every speech, Trump was talking about prices and cost of living more than twice as often as Kamala Harris did it. Now, Trump has no real plan to fix it. He's going to put in place tariffs, which will just make everything more expensive. It's vapid from an able to do something standpoint. But it's a losing strategy when your opponent is talking twice as much as you are about something that keeps showing up in the polling as one of the most important issues. So I see this postmortem as essentially a disaster. They're acknowledging things went wrong, but not really the underlying reality of why that is. So my view is we need a totally new approach when it comes to the campaign. Obviously, different candidates will deal with that. Let's leave it there today. Let me know your thoughts. info@davidpakman.com. We'll take a quick break. This holiday season, after that insane election we just had, where you might be feeling like it's the end of the world, it's good to take time to slow down, enjoy time with loved ones, and here is a great way to do it. Doomlings, a delightful card game for the end of the world. Doomlings is a really funny new card game for 2 to 6 players. The game doesn't really focus on doom and gloom or the end of the world. It's just about having fun with people you love. The game only takes 5 minutes to learn. The rules are on the cards, easy to pick up even for kids, and suitable for anybody 10 and up. The game started on Kickstarter just a few years ago, went totally viral. Doomlings is now available at Target and Walmart, but if you go to doomlings.com/Pacman and use the code Pacman, you'll get 15% off. Grab yourself a copy of the game. I've had a ton of fun playing it. Hilarious, guaranteed to make it a great time with family and friends. The link is in the description.